Hello, it's the 20th of September. This is Renew Every Morning. I'm Paul Anderson-Walsh. Thank you for being with me as always. All right, well, we're very much in the grip of our study from one of my books, actually, the Bonsai Conspiracy, and we're just looking kind of chapter by chapter, theme by theme, at some of the ideas that were very much the formative ideas for the Grace Project that we started some 25 years ago, which does seem like a long way back now. But today I'm going to be thinking about the idea of the exchanged life. From the wrong person to the right person is kind of the theme I've got. And when we looked at the Bonsai Conspiracy so far, we kind of, in the last session that we had together yesterday, we were looking at the kind of engine of shrinkage, which I called deception. And that was the idea that the false self is built on this notion of appearances and independence. And today we're going to step into the kind of gospel's counter move, which is what I would describe as the exchanged life. Now, this is not a life that's about self-improvement. This is self-replacement. This is not try harder. This is Christ in you. This is not do better. This is a different kind of life. Three conditions, one story. Think of humanity maybe in three movements. So you might have the neutral person. God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7. Made in his image, called to steward, of course, called to express goodness, able not to sin. Then let's talk about the wrong person. And this is the fall, the great deception. And as a consequence of falling into unconsciousness, or losing Christ consciousness, if you will, they were now not able not to sin. So this is the kind of, if you will, the new... I worry about the word nature these days. It was a word I used a lot when I was writing 25 years ago. But now I think of it more of mind. Now I think of more of it of state of consciousness. So this, if you will, rather than saying the new nature, is the new state of consciousness, dominated, if you will, by what? Self-righteousness. It's the projections of self-righteousness and thinking that works make us acceptable. So we are essentially dead to God, but alive to self-saving. And that is a tricky space to be in. And then my final one will be the right person. This is the new creation person who has literally, he who has the Son has life. And that's everybody, which is something that is something we need to shout louder and louder and louder. We know that anyone born of God doesn't keep sinning. Now remember, this then becomes something very interesting, because now they're in the new nature space, restored dominion under Christ, righteous works overflow. So now this community of people are not able to sin. Do you see? So those three movements are really interesting, because that's the kind of engaging and the operation of the new nature in us. So that's the basic idea, I think. And the point isn't behavioural. It's not about the person who's not able to sin has somehow reached some sort of behavioural perfectionism. It's the nature exchange. New source, new center, new life, new operating, literally a new operating base. And if we could rescue ourselves, if that was something we could do ourselves, then Christ died for nothing. That's what Paul says in Galatians chapter 2. We couldn't. So love did what we could not. Love paid the penalty, entered death, rose and joined us to himself, taking the wrong persons out of Adam and bringing the right person in to Christ. And that's it. That's essentially what it looks like. And it's not a super complex conversation, but if you want, because you and I still physically look the same, it might be hard to reason, well, what's actually happened? What is this transfiguration? What is this great switch? What is this great upgrade that you're talking about? But it's about consciousness, it's about mind of Christness. So we are, ironically, tragically, in a very difficult space, because I will argue that this transfer, this upgrade, this uplift, this elevation, if you like, has happened to all humanity. And that leaves us in a very odd position, because we are filled, but still unfulfilled. And so you say, well, how is that? And that is because of the separation illusion. And this illusion, I think, is a very, very significant problem indeed. And here's the tragedy. We all assent to the idea of the indwelling Christ. Every believer I know believes that Christ lives in them. And even people that don't know that, it's still a fact. Yet we operate as if Jesus were a kind of God on the outside. And we quote Galatians 2:20 more like this. We would more likely say, I live for Christ's sake by my faith in the Son of God. And that's not what Galatians says. That is self-living for God. And it leaves us desperate and desperately unfulfilled. And the cure's never, ever going to be more effort. It's union awareness. That's the only thing that we need to get a hold of. It's the cure, as I say, it's recognizing what Paul really says in Galatians 2:20, which is what? It's no longer I that live, says Paul, but Christ lives in me. And the life I live by the faith of the Son of God. We've seen this a couple of times already. Now, I had I shall call it a Pentecostal detour. Now, I know that all things work together for good, so I'm going to embrace it as an important part of my process. And, by the way, indeed it was. But I need to kind of tell you a little bit of a story about improving my old life. So I kind of washed up on the shores of Pentecostalism, hungry for life. It looked muscular. It felt alive. It felt electric. And I was told that the secret is the Holy Spirit. Desire him and he will empower you to live for God. And I had every book, every tape, everything you can imagine. So I went all in. I sought more filling, more power, more dedication, more love, more power. I mean, it just goes on. I can think of those songs we used to scream all night long. My life improved. I was reformed. But it was still me living my life for God. The dosage just needed constant increases of rededication and recommitment. Yet the anesthetic just kept wearing off. It just did. And a question began to drip, 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 like an awful dripping tap. Who am I? Or more precisely, Adam, where are you? Well, I threw myself into service. That's what I would do. It cost me my family, if I'm honest. I've got a lot of deep-seated regret about that. Elder brother syndrome crept in. In my darker moments, I read John 15, verse 5, as if it actually said, because of you, I can do nothing. Then one night, just slumped over my desk, I opened the Bible and I saw this verse, Galatians chapter 3, verse 1. And it just shook me to the core. Who has bewitched you? I kind of tried to bury it. Now, days later, I was in Sao Paulo. In Sao Paulo in Brazil. I love being in Brazil at this particular time. I didn't love it so much because this was a very serious day for me. And after a night of applause, I don't know, 4,000 people or whatever it was, cheering what I'd done, the Lord whispered into my ear, how much is too much for you? Where does this end? And I saw a vision. It was it was a very sad picture. But there was my wife. She was alone. She was desperate. And me beside her in a kind of designer suit and a smile and my latest book under my arm. And that was it. And I just fell on the floor and just wept. I was absolutely undone. That summer, he lifted the veil for me. It was very powerful. I resigned. I left my post in the church. I was the head of the director or principal or whatever it was. I can't remember the language these days, of the Bible school. It was a big Bible school. I loved it. I loved looking after my students there. They were just so many beautiful people. But I heard him say, you need to leave this. And I want you to go and grow a church by grace alone. That's what I want you to do. And I started planning, and then he interrupted me and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I thought, grace alone meant just teach justification by faith, but he meant build it by grace alone. Let it be organic, let it be spontaneous, and cooperate with me. Don't try to incorporate me, just cooperate with me. I'm not to be incorporated." And he sent me to it was beautiful actually, because he sent me to my Aquila and my Priscilla, and through Norman Grubb and the writings of Dan Stone, and through their pages, and through the connection and love of my dear and spiritual mothers, as I call them, Dee Dee Winter and Linda Bunting, I began to kind of make sense out of it all. And you know what? The cross had already been applied to my life deeply. But what happened then was that life he had placed in me was suddenly unveiled. And I realized that I'd reduced Christianity, I'd reduced the Christian life to something I did instead of someone that I am. And I guess the problem I had was that my success kind of validated the deception, really. And if I read the story in Galatia, I can see how easy it is for good people to get bewitched. This is the Galatian story. Agitators arrived with a brilliant half-truth. Yes, they said, of course grace saves you, but now you need to go on to perfection. Circumcision and Moses. Contemporary Christianity says start with Moses and then add the marks. Baptism, be filled, tithe, live the Sermon on the Mount, and you'll be complete. And that was kind of Paul's lament. It thunders across the ages. Who has bewitched you? And he says, I am in labour until Christ is formed in you. Formed in you, not strapped onto you, not some kind of adjunct. Why does it work so well? Well, because it preys on the false self. It preys on that narrative, the illusion that we're independent, improvable selves who can add kind of inches to our spiritual stature by religious effort. And there is this kind of silent I, if you like. English is very helpful in this sense, because in the word deceived, the I is silent. I before E, except after C. The I is silent. So in the gospel, the silent I is spirit. God is spirit, unseen, often unfelt maybe, yet the truest I within the believer. Because Eve wasn't conscious of union, she was deceived. The silent I was ignored. For freedom Christ has set us free. Now stand firm and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. If you accept circumcision, Christ will be of no use to you whatsoever. What does that mean by way of translation? Very simple, that if you return to self-improvement, you cut yourself off from self-replacement. You fall from grace, you don't fall from God's love, but you fall from grace. It's God's method. And so this exchange is practicing these simple 5 movements, and here they are. The movement from the wrong person to the right person. Confess reality, and that is a confession that says, Father, apart from you, I can do nothing. Absolutely, Christ is my life. Relinquish management. I resign from being my own saviour and I abandon my self-improvement project. I give it up completely. Recognize union. I'm one spirit with you. Receive his faith. I live by the faith of the Son of God. Your confidence is at work in me. And 5, responded as a vessel. Just ask the question in any moment, Christ in me, how do you want to be yourself in me in this moment? How do you want to do that? And that's it. That's all we do. All right. So a word for the weary. If you are filled but unfulfilled, hear this. You don't need more spirit. You don't need to have more of the spirit by, all you need to do is release your grip on your self-management. And that's all you need to do. So just this week as you come into it, just maybe try this simple idea. Just be still. Again, Psalm 46 verse 10, we come back to this and anchor over and over again. Be still and know that I am God. Name the pull. I feel the tug to perform, to manage, to control, whatever it might be, and exchange it. It's no longer I that live, but it's Christ that lives within me. And then act. Take one small step as a vessel, not a hero. All right, well then, let me just close quickly. Bonsai says, clip harder, prune more, decorate better. the gospel says, change the life source from the wrong person to the right person. That is simply it. Well, all right. Well, perhaps I'll pick up the end of this next time we're together. But in the meantime, I wish you a great day and thank you for being with us. All right. God bless you. Bye-bye.